nonprofit that we've established. And then we also have a board of directors that has also been organized for this. So without further ado, we want to express our gratitude for the Mr. Mayor and the council for allowing us to come tonight and submit our desire for a Veterans Park. Thank you very much, and we open it up to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
From what I understand, Mr. Hattabaugh, is that the bronze statues are not all going to be put in at the same time. They're going to be incremental. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we will have the one for the center. This particular one will be bought and paid for prior to it opening. And it may be possible to have others in place.
But they'll be fully funded before they're ready.
Yes,
correct.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, who's paying for this whole thing?
Good question.
I know it is.
That's a great question. It'll all be privately funded.
That's simply amazing.
Yeah. We, in fact, we have a handout for you, I believe, don't we? Oh, maybe it didn't get put in, but I've got a handout. I can bring it up on the computer, but. We have several different methods that we'll be using to raise funds, and we anticipate it will take probably about a year and a half. And we're looking, just to begin with, before we start, at one point, about $1.5 million is what we want to raise prior. That will be enough to get the park done without additional statues, but we'd love to do more than that to pay for all the statues. But and to be honest with you, this is still a little bit fluid as far as the design. It's not. This isn't a complete master plan as yet, and so it allows for some changes and additions.
What are you looking for from Bountiful City to begin your fundraising efforts?
The only thing that we would like from Bountiful City is to help with the maintenance. And what we're looking at is we've got a lot of organizations, as you see here, and thank you for the citizens of Bountiful for coming out and supporting tonight. We have lots of organizations throughout our community that will help in maintenance, maybe planting flowers each year, some of the gardening, some of some basic things. All that we would like Bountiful City to do, it's a piece of ground they already maintain. It would just be mowing the same lawn and edging the same lawn basically. And then we will have a committee. We have organized a committee, and we'll have this 501c3 committee who will be able to garner the help of others in the community to help with different aspects of it through the years. Plus, we want to have funds set aside once we have raised the funds, have some funds set aside for maintenance as well.
Councilman Simonson, I ask you the same question. Is there any key things that the council has and the city have to do before fundraising efforts are going to be able to go forward for other organizations requesting funds?
Yes, we would need approval from the city first to have a Veterans Park, and second, I think we need to have permission for the location, which we have asked for on the north side of this building.
And then at that point you'd be able to secure funding from outside sources, is that correct?
At that time, we could then go to outside sources and secure funding and donations, in-kind donations, once that we're aware and they are aware that we have the location and it's been given us by the city, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The designer, the builder, anybody?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
We may have
Appreciate
other
it.
questions as we get along here, but we'll turn some
Okay.
time over to our city manager, Gary Hill.
Thanks, Mayor. So in your staff report, there's some other information. Of course, with any proposal by any group that proposes to use city property, staff does an evaluation, and we try to give information to the council so you can make a well-informed decision. That includes pros and cons, and I hope the cons don't come across as negative. They're not intended to be that way, more just as I think it's important to have a full picture of what this might mean, the decisions that this will take. I think the first thing I do want to mention, just for those maybe in the audience, is that because this is a work session, the council can't take formal action in this meeting. You're not required to take any action tonight, but I think any direction you want to give, certainly staff and the veterans would appreciate. As was mentioned, the proposal is that this would be funded entirely, the construction would be funded entirely by private donations through the foundation. And then at that point, the park and all of the infrastructure would be given to the city. So the statues, everything else would be the responsibility of the city. And certainly we appreciate the thought that's put into helping with maintenance. Experience shows over the course of years, though, that inevitably this will become the responsibility of the city to maintain at some point in the future. And so we just would want to make sure that whatever is constructed is done in such a way that the maintenance is not a burden on the taxpayers. That anything that's built deserves to be maintained in a great state, and we would not want any kind of an improvement that would be built in a way that it couldn't be maintained in a way that we're proud of. That would be setting us all up for failure, and I don't think anybody wants that. So for staff, that's a primary concern, is that whatever is built is maintainable and it doesn't create an undue burden or cost for the city. So the materials that are selected, the location, technology, lighting, all those things, we'd want to be very careful and the committee has talked, and I really appreciate what they've said about working in conjunction with the city. I know that that's their intention too. So I think that's an area where we just want to be careful. Timing is an interesting question for a couple of reasons. First, I think, as you know, we're in the middle of designing a remodel for this building. And until this building construction is completed, we can't have any construction going on next door. The plan right now is for this building for us to leave this building in April. We'll then have construction on the building for about 12 months. It's likely that will be the staging area for equipment and materials, and so really nothing could be done on any site, on that site, if that's what's selected, until after the construction of the City Hall works. But as I understand it, 1.5 years of fundraising works anyway for the group, so I don't know that that's a big hurdle. There is a question about determining whether or not that's the appropriate site, though. There are a couple of things that I think, again, not in the interest of being a negative Nelly, but understanding the constraints, that the issues that the City Council is already working with. The first goes back to when the RDA was renewed about, I want to say 4 years ago now. Part of that RDA renewal commitment to the other taxing entities is that the property surrounding this City Hall was going to be developed. And that included mixed use, potentially in the front, potential housing. That was in order to get the property on the tax rolls to help support the RDA revenue that we wanted to generate. It never contemplated having a large portion being dedicated to a park. Now, admittedly, that plan was put together when the idea was to relocate City Hall, which could have changed everything. As a city, as a council, we have not talked about any future development of this site, but it's important to be known that that was a consideration as recently as 4 years ago. In conjunction with that, the county is looking at improving the Golden Years Center as well as the library. They have not selected a location. The possibility is that they might combine the two. We know that they want it located in South Davis County. We know that we want it to stay in Bountiful. And certainly we know that our preference is that it go down next to the new plaza, the library or joint library and Golden Year Center. But the county hasn't made that decision yet. And to dedicate this piece of property before they make that decision simply removes an option for them. I'm not sure that's good or bad. It does limit some options for the county in keeping the library and Golden Year Center here potentially. The other option is they could go in front. If they choose not to go downtown, that limits the RDA option of developing that property. So there's a lot of pins that may yet need to fall before the council's really comfortable in dedicating that property. The other consideration that's probably more urgent is that as part of the renovation of this building, we have not gotten yet to the design of this building yet where we've decided what kind of an HVAC system we're going to have. Traditionally, it's an on-roof, unit. Something that we're seriously considering, depending upon cost, would be an in-ground heat exchange system, a geothermal, where you have a well, a series of wells, dozens and dozens of wells, probably 200 by 600 would be the footprint, 200 by 60 would be the footprint of the wells that would be drilled down for this. One of the options to do that is in the field next to us. By making a decision right now about the location, we're going to take away that option, which could increase the costs of that particular method of heating and cooling this building. Other option would be to do it in the parking lot. That has pros and cons. We may not do it at all. We just simply aren't far enough down the design path yet to know. So back to those two key sort of timing discussions. The county, I've talked with Chris Sanford, the library director, about timing for a decision on the library, and told her that the city would like to know about a location for a library by the end of June, by the beginning of our fiscal year. It's been a hard one. It's been somewhat political for them to make, and with new commissioners, they can't do anything until there's a new commission in place. But this was a conversation I had with her. It's been 2 months. It was well before this topic came up. But just so you know, that's their timeline, if they stick with it. We all know how successful we've been at trying to force the county to make a decision about the location on the library. I think we're going on 3 or 4 years now, so we'll see. We can't control that. As far as the design of this building, I would think we would have an answer for whether or not we would need that filled, and the degree to which that might impact or might not impact any other use on that field by April at the latest. Does that sound fair, Lloyd? So that's not very far off in the distance. But so those are some site considerations. I think overall, though, having said tempered the conversation for tonight, I want to reiterate that we'd be honored as staff to maintain anything that's built. We just have to be aware of that it's in the appropriate location, that it's made of the appropriate materials so that it doesn't become an undue burden. But we'd support whatever the council would like to do. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and turn it back to you.
I think it'd be appropriate to remind those that are here that we have 2 veterans on our city council that we're really proud of. I think our timing and your timing for being here is really, really inspired, because here we are just, I know yesterday at my work, I was responsible for conducting a service for Memorial Day, which was Veterans Day, excuse me, which was actually on Sunday. And so I think you coming today, close to that very special day, and having a couple of our veterans here is very important. For me personally, I'm not a veteran, but my dad, Farrell Lewis, was at Pearl Harbor the day of infamy, which is December 7th, 1941. So I'm a stakeholder as well, and I have loved this presentation today. I've really appreciated the concise and precision by which you have made this request to us. I think what you need to know from me, and we may have a comment or two from maybe all of our council will want to make a comment. We do have about 10 minutes before we start our other meeting, is that it's about time. You know, I know that we were talking about this the week that I became mayor just about 5 years ago, and I would suspect if we asked those that have been here on the council longer than that, John, Mark, and Richard, that it was probably talked about before. I imagine it was probably talked about before that. So it's really impressive how you've worked together to come up with all of these designs and concepts, and we want you to know that we want this to happen. We want this to happen. I think very much in support of what Gary says, and we so much appreciate having a city manager who sees a big picture, and that's really important. That's important for all of us to see a big picture, that we get it right, we do it at the right time, and we do it in the right way. So I just want you to know from the mayor's perspective, this is about time. And I'm really confident that it's going to happen. That's what I like. I like the feeling that it's going to happen, and it'll be Bountiful appropriate. Anything from the council? Anything from any of the council members?
I'd love to see this happen. I know this is something that's been popular on surveys that we've done with our residents, so I think it's important to the people here in this room, but I also know that it's important to our residents as a whole, and so I'm really excited about this, and I feel the same as what the mayor is saying. I think it's time. I think it's definitely something that the city wants to do. I do think it's good to take our time and do it right, and so as we're looking at sites, I think that it's okay if we take a little time now to get it right, but I just feel 100% committed. I feel like there's no question if, but when. I mean, from my perspective, but thank you for your work.
Question for you, Gary. Locations that city staff might think are preferable to this one. What are the thoughts there?
If the idea is to have it be a park as opposed to a smaller footprint, but a park of similar size, the options are limited. For property that we already own, you'd be limited to this site right here. You'd be potentially the area in the cemetery that was shown where the markers are. I think that was originally identified as a possible location and wasn't recommended as high as this location was by the committee. And Chris or others can talk about that, but that's a possible location, and for many feel like that's an appropriate location, but I don't think the veterans group does. I think they would prefer that it honor the living. I think that's a concern they have with the cemetery location. I think there are others that feel differently. You could find space potentially in 4th North Park, but I think it would have to be a smaller size memorial, and I'm sorry, I'm lacking a good word for something that isn't memorial, that isn't park also. So, but I think you know what I mean. It need to be a smaller footprint if it was going to be in 4th North Park, or the property in front is also a possibility. Again, that's definitely going to take away some prime redevelopment property, and so I think it would probably take a longer time to decide if that's the appropriate location or not.
Sure.
The other parks, The only other location that we actually did set aside and it's still available, but again, it's a smaller footprint, is at Creekside Park as you to the west and north, to the west of the parking area was set aside specifically for this purpose in the design, but that was back when I think the concept was something much more modest and not as impressive, so.
Sure. Concerning the planning and execution of the City Hall's HVAC system, April seems like a long time if you're moving out in April. Wouldn't those things be decided well ahead of April?
Likely. I'm giving a worst-case scenario because
Sure.
I never want to be one who says February and then have angry veterans come back to me and say, why isn't it the decision made now? I think that is, like I said, the very last date by
Sure.
which it would be. So.
I'm not an expert in geothermal heat pumps, as you're talking about, but I have a cousin who's been in the business for more than 20 years, and he says that the plumbing that's installed underground is guaranteed for 100 years, and the only time they've ever had any maintenance issues with it is when someone digs into it as part of a different project. And he said that it would be completely compatible to have a park on top of those underground wells.
That's interesting.
So I think that that part of it wouldn't necessarily be as big of an issue as it might have or might seem.
Yeah, I think
The timing is an issue.
I think it's only what's on. It's a matter of timing, which would go first, the chicken or the egg, the heat pump or the park, right? But
Yeah.
We were actually hoping for that you would put a heating and cooling system in so we could have climate control for the park. We talked about it, but we didn't know how to.
now we can do it all.
Thank you.
There you go.
Very good. You know, one other thing that we ought to say, and of course, the disclaimer by our superb councilman, Chris Simonson, we acknowledge, and you all know that he's worked really hard, tirelessly, in behalf of this project for a long time. And though he's being mute, and then we know that it is really stressful to him to be mute, we, at the same time, we want to make sure that he's honored for his dedication and for his vision about this. So it's okay to remain mute. Any other?
I don't need to be mute.
No, no, for sure.
Let's
And you wouldn't be.
Let's build the damn thing.
Yeah.
You know, Mayor, we lose 75 veterans a day. I think it's time we stop talking. And as Mark said, let's just do it. Let's just do it. Some of the other things that are kind of coming up, I think can be worked around, but this is too important, in my opinion, for us not to move ahead. Give us the property, give us the time, and let us start raising money, and let's start honoring our veterans now. Thank you.
With that, we're about to start our regular city council meeting. We appreciate all of you who have come. All of you have been, well, it's more than respectful. You've been here to honor those who have served us and kept our freedoms. It's so important every day.
Amen.
Thank you.
I think
Thank
we
you
need
very
to
much.
extend an invitation for everyone to remain here for the next meeting.
I think it's mandatory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gary,
Thanks.
did you need direction from us on anything right now?
Only if you want to. No.
Okay.
The renderings, for those who are leaving, the renderings for the park are out front in the lobby.
Can we take a picture of the maquette? Eric,
The which?
can we take a picture of that?
Yeah, you betcha.